a couple more in. So while we're waiting, we're going to go over a couple of house rules. Okay. We're just going to go over a couple of house rules. So when everyone enters, your screen will be turned off. The only screens that are currently on should be the screens of our speaker, myself, and our CEO. Please keep your mics muted as well. And we'll have a chat feature where if you have any questions during the presentations, you are more than welcome to enter your questions into there, and we will answer all questions at the end for our chat session. Right now, we are going to have a few words from our CEO, Ms. Linda Levin.
Thank you, Alex. And good morning, everybody. Actually, I guess it's afternoon now. I just want to thank everyone for coming to today's workshop, Elder Abuse. It's not just scams. This event is taking place here in Northeast Florida, but there are similar events happening all over the world. It is World Elder Awareness Day. Today's workshop is hosted by ElderSource and our community partners at the Florida Health Department in Nassau County. So we want to thank them as well for this event. ElderSource is the Area Agency on Aging and the Aging and Disability Resource Center for 7 counties in Northeast Florida. And our mission, which we're going to advance the slide so you can see that, is, well, there it is, is to empower people to live and age with independence and dignity in their homes and their community. I think we can acknowledge that elder abuse is one of the most devastating and damaging ways an older adult can lose his or her independence and sense of self-worth, which is why this conversation today is so important. I feel certain that today's speakers, and you'll be introduced to them shortly, will provide you with some very valuable information. One piece I do want to mention, this is an opportunity. When we talk about elder abuse, there's different forms of elder abuse and neglect, and you'll hear about that. And it does include scams, and it does include fraud. And at elder abuse, while we work very closely with the Department of Children and Families and our providers to serve older adults who may be at risk of elder abuse or neglect, we also have our SHINE program and our Senior Medicare Patrol program. And those are 2 things you might want to go to our website to learn more about, to see how we can help older adults address and resolve concerns related to their health insurance fraud. Medicare fraud is a huge problem and also needs to be addressed when we talk about elder abuse and scams. So I invite you to go to our website and learn more about that. In the meantime, learn a lot from today's event. Take care, be well, stay well, and thank you for joining us for this virtual workshop. Andrea or Alex?
Okay, I'm back.
I'm back. We're both back.
Yes, we are. Andrea, do you want to just review the house rules now that we have them up on the slide in writing?
I do. I'm going to just go to the very bottom one. We had some technical difficulties a second ago, so please be patient with us. If something happens, give us a little bit of breathing room. Some of these tools are still new to some of us, and sometimes we're just throwing a curveball like we were about 10 minutes ago. So just know that this session is being recorded, and we're going to be sharing all the information following the recording. Please remain muted, and we will have our questions and answer at the very end. And for those of you who are not familiar with Zoom, up at the very top where it says speaker view, you will see the slides, and then you will see just the person who is speaking. So that's a little bit easier to follow along as opposed to the gallery view, which has all the different pictures of everybody up there. So when we come to the Q&A section, the chat box down at the very bottom, we'll review this again, put your question in the Q&A, and you may have a question like right now in your mind. So just know that you can type it in, and our two event producers, Alex and Jessica, will be monitoring those questions and pull those up at the very end of the presentation. So we'll give you a couple little reminders and a tip, you know, again, when we get to that point. But right now I want to take just 10 seconds and introduce our first speaker, Eileen Rodden. She's been a wonderful friend and advocate for seniors in our community. Alex, you can go to the title slide, the next title slide for our speaker. And Eileen is with the Women's Center of Jacksonville, and she's the community education director for this particular program that has this wonderful resource for individuals in our community. And she's going to review with us today the elder abuse. It's more than just scams. So Eileen, why don't you take it away? And I'm going to go on mute.
Thank you, Andrea. We have had the Abuse in Later Life program at the Women's Center of Jacksonville for, well, since 2013, with a year lapse in between. The Department of Justice awarded this grant to only 5 entities nationally in 2013. And then we have the continuation grant now with several other entities here in North Florida receiving the award. Our object is to train law enforcement, judges, and prosecutors about elder abuse. And that is one of the things we're trying today, is to reach out to the community and let you know what elder abuse actually is. Abuse in later life occurs when an older person, an older adult, is in a position of trust with someone, and that might be an intimate partner, unmarried, or it might be a spouse, a caregiver, an adult child, and then that person commits some sort of abuse against the older person. It can be physical. It can be really detrimental to a person when it is emotional and psychological, such as gaslighting an older person. And also it can be financial exploitation. Sadly, only 1 in 24 cases are reported to law enforcement or the Department of Children and Families Adult Protective Services. And financial exploitation is hugely detrimental to older people, as it steals from them between $2.6 billion and $39 billion a year. There were 2 separate studies on that. The original MetLife study in 2011, followed by the TrueLink study in 2014. This is a horrible and devastating financial loss for older people. So who are the victims and how are they affected? So sometimes an older person who is the victim of elder abuse has had some type of cognitive decline or physical impairment. And because I'm with the Women's Center of Jacksonville, and because we address sexual assault and violence against women 18 through end of life, what you would see typically are bruises on the person. Unfortunately, skin tears. As a person's skin ages, it becomes thinner and more susceptible to bruising and tearing, and other physical evidence that can cause risk of infections to an older person, and that includes sexually transmitted diseases, pelvic injuries, hip injuries, and they can all be the result of a sexual assault on an older person. Next slide, please. And it is anticipated that 18% of women aged 65 and older will be sexually abused in their lifetime. This is a really high statistic, and we have many people who suffer a sexual assault and sexual violence and never report it. There are basically several generations of older adults who are affected by elder abuse. There are the younger people, 60 to about age 75, and then 75 to 84, followed by those at the end of life, 84 through 100. Elders who have been abused, though, have a 300% higher risk of death when compared to those who have not been mistreated. That is because of the injuries we've mentioned previously. Next slide. And so from the National Center on Elder Abuse and most recently the John Hartford Foundation JINS 2020 informational guide, 70% of victims reside in nursing homes, 10% of 60-year-olds in community dwellings, 20% in long-term care, and a high number, 14%, are assaulted in the home of the perpetrator, while 12% are abused in their own home. And half die within a year of the assault of those abused in nursing homes. Next slide, please. So who is targeted? And that's anyone who's older, who may have a physical impairment, perhaps a loss of vision, perhaps it's their ability to ambulate, move about, perhaps they are suffering some memory losses or more significant loss of executive function and cognitive decline. But the physical impairment seems to be a key player in this, because then they cannot get away from the abuser. A woman who's been abused earlier in life has a greater risk of being abused later in life. And we have already addressed some of those physical attributes of the assaults. Next slide. 90% of all elder abuse cases have reported the perpetrator was a family member. So why do people do that? Largely, it is a power and control and greed issue. They want something from the older person. The older person is possibly on retirement or receives Social Security or Social Security disability, and that constant stream of funds becomes very appealing to an abuser. 2/3 of those who are perpetrators were adult children or spouses. And the reason that they cite most often, perpetrators will say, well, she's just clumsy. Oh, she made that up. Or you're a difficult person because you're an older person. What do you expect? So they're the tactics and the explanations and manipulations that perpetrators often use when dealing then with any investigation. Abusers attempt to convince everybody that the older person is incompetent or crazy, and they totally control the day-to-day function of the older person, banking especially, but even being able to get the prescriptions the older person needs. Sometimes they're withheld, or the older person is given too much medication and they're not able to function or report these abuses. Next slide, please. And as we address, most of these people who are the abusers are the family members, and sometimes it is the person who is also the caregiver. And that person may have substance issues, mental health issues. They may have their own cognitive impairments or physical impairments. And the older adult is sometimes caring for that person who then becomes abusive to the older person. And they oftentimes are dependent because of their other substance abuse or inability to hold a job. They rely on the older adult then for housing, transportation, and sometimes their own care. 1/3 of abusers are age 60 and over. Next slide, please. And so a lot of people will say, well, why don't more people report? If you're an older person and you are aging at home and everything's going fairly well and you have good services thanks to people like ElderSource and our councils on aging throughout Northeast Florida, well, you know, that's fine, but some people aren't doing so well and are very fearful that they may be suffering retribution from the family member who's the abuser by putting them in a nursing home. Shame carries a huge, huge weight on the person. They have sometimes raised this person. They feel responsible. They feel they didn't do enough to tell them about what's right and what's not right. And also then sometimes it's other family members pressuring the older person not to report the abuse because it would weigh heavily on the family name and reputation. Older people, especially when it's a sexual assault, are extremely embarrassed. This is not a very private issue, and they're not very willing to discuss it with anyone. And some cases actually are retribution by the younger person for what the older person may have done to them in their lifetime. Next slide, please. So elder abuse triples the risk of premature death. The victims of elder abuse are 4 times more likely to be admitted to a nursing home, 3 times more likely to be admitted to a hospital. People who have cognitive incapacity suffer significantly greater losses, and you'll hear more about that financial exploitation when Alicia Summers speaks to us. Financial exploitation does cause loss of an automobile, loss of their own home. The bank accounts are totally drained. And this information comes through the Department of Justice Elder Justice Initiative. Next slide, please. So I put down some resources that I thought might be helpful. Oftentimes people will say, oh, I think there might be elder abuse. I'll call the Department of Children and Families Adult Protective Services. And then they're disappointed that perhaps that report is not accepted for interview or an investigation. But it is a good idea if you suspect the elder abuse to call 1-800-96-ABUSE and let them decide if the case can be further investigated. If it is a victim of a crime situation, it's a person who's age 60 and over who is the victim of a crime, then please call law enforcement. The Women's Center of Jacksonville is ready 24/7 with a hotline. Our number is 904-721-7273. And we offer forensic exams for those who have been sexually assaulted. And we also have advocacy and support services in place for anyone 18 through end of life. Hubbard House is the Certified Domestic Violence Center, and their hotline number is 904-354-3114. And you can now text with COVID-19. Hubbard House initiated this texting option so that although you're in the same house with your abuser, domestic abuser, you still could reach out to them through text. And that number is 904-210-3698. Of course, you know ElderSource, the area agency on aging, and how to reach them. Again, if you suspect abuse, call 1-800-96-ABUSE, and for victims of crime, 911, and when in doubt, 911. Any questions?
Hi, Eileen. I do have a few questions here.
Surely.
The first question is, why doesn't APS take all reported cases?
Right. So there has to be a loss of capacity, a vulnerability of the person that they're looking at in order for them to take the case. So it's a restriction, just the nature of what elder abuse services can provide.
Perfect. The next
Another
one I
question?
have, when an older adult is the victim of physical assault or violence, is it an APS case?
So it depends again on the person's capacity, but certainly if someone is physically abused and there's bruises, broken bones, or whatever, that's an emergency. So call 911 for emergency care people on an ambulance to come for the person if necessary. And law enforcement also has that ability to reach out to Adult Protective Service. And they can have what they call concurrent investigations. So each entity, Children and Families, Adult Protective Service, and JSO can have investigations going at the same time. Anything else?
Perfect. We'll save the rest of the questions for the end.
Surely. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Eileen. That was terrific. And all those great resources that she shared, we're going to be collecting all this information and sending everybody a follow-up. So you'll have that at your fingertips. The next speaker is Kristen Drake, and she is an elder law attorney residing in Fernandina Beach. So she's going to provide us some great information on the legal ways to help elders and their families not become victims of abuse. Welcome, Kristen. Thank you for joining us today. And thank you, Eileen.
Sure.
Thank you. I feel a little bit bad after listening to Eileen because now I feel like I'm going to give you all the legal help to help these people take advantage of the elderly, which is something we really have to be careful about, because what we try and do as attorneys is in planning. So what we're talking about today, or I'm talking about today, is prior to something happening, trying to set things up to avoid some of the problems that can happen. And you can go to my first slide if you'd like. And things that you can work on with an attorney, and as we all know, you can also go into places like Staples and buy these documents that really concern us as attorneys, because we feel like they are a lot more than just documents. They are very powerful documents, and there are certain positions that we're going to talk about in these different documents that attorneys can help their clients draft and get executed properly, that there's certain positions in here that gives an individual a lot of power. So it has to be the right person. And the problem that not everyone out there has a great person to fill these roles is a huge problem. I don't have an answer. I keep saying I'm going to give a seminar someday to explain who you can name when you don't have someone to name. Because unless you have a lot of money, typically corporate and professionals aren't going to be there to help. So having trusted people in our lives is extremely important. It's something for us to think about from, early in life, that you just need to know who are trusted individuals in your life, who you can trust when you do perhaps become more vulnerable and need more assistance, to be there to do what's in your best interest, not their best interest. Because we all have horror stories, and we as attorneys certainly don't want to be having someone come back to us knowing that we named someone in a document that in turn use that document to take advantage of our clients. So I'm just briefly going to go through some of the documents that we as attorneys can help our clients review and consider in order to plan for in the future. Can you go back? Because I'm going to go through, I apologize if you can, it's fine. Okay. So the first document is the Durable Power of Attorney, which I'm assuming everyone out there has heard of. And it's a wonderful document. We've actually used it quite a bit during COVID-19, when mom or dad or sister or brother can't leave their home, and we want to be able to help them continue to perhaps get something out of a safe deposit box and some various other things. So that durable power of attorney is a very powerful document. And as an estate planning attorney, we like that. We want it to be very broad. And as I say in my office probably every day or now on the phone with people, my crystal ball is in the shop. I don't know what tomorrow will bring. And I want to know that there's somebody there that you individually have decided you want to stand in your shoes and do what needs to be done. And again, you need to have those trusted people in your life. And sometimes our clients have a spouse, but after that, they don't have that next backup. And I always have to say, well, one of you probably is going to need some backup individuals. So it's not just one trusted individual, it's a lot more. So the power of attorney, if someone said to me, what is the one document that I think everyone needs to have? It's the power of attorney. Because if you don't have a power of attorney and something needs to be done, we're sort of stuck between not doing it or doing a very expensive option, which is getting a guardianship, which I'm going to touch on. So how does a power of attorney help families not to become victims of abuse? It helps because it allows someone some access into your finances and to be able to watch to see if something's happening. So we're going to talk a little bit about having these documents is terrific, but if you are holding things close and no one knows what's going on, they're not going to help, because people have to be able to see what's happening in your life in order to help you. I'm sure we all know cases where you find out months and months later that someone was sending money, with scammers and things of that nature. They don't usually call up the family and say, I just sent $100,000 to some foreign country because I won the lottery. They tend not to share that. So the power of attorney is that broad document that allows someone to help manage your finances. And in Florida, one perhaps worrisome thing is that it's valid as soon as you sign it. So if your agent is not a good person and they have a copy of that power of attorney, there's a lot of damage they could do. So I can't stress enough, it's not just having the document, it's having the right people in the document. Other documents we use in planning are trust documents, and that's just a way of holding property that has people managing it, yourself, and then successor trustees. And it's a great tool for planning for incapacity. Because again, just like in a power of attorney where you have agents who can handle and help step in and handle your finances if you're not able to, the trust is similar. It just has to do with which asset that the person would be managing it. And those are both for finance. So the power of attorney and trust are generally for finance. And it gets confusing because you can also have a power of attorney for healthcare. I'm going to talk about a designation of healthcare surrogate. So I have my durable power of attorney for finance. The trust is another financial agreement that you can have that allows you to have a successor trustee that would help plan if you were incapacitated. Designation of healthcare surrogate allows you, again, the individual, to decide who do you want to make healthcare decisions for you, informed consent decisions if you're not able. And that's how these help you hopefully avoid some scamming if you've taken the time to think through, if in the future I'm unable to handle my affairs, who are the people I want around me to do that? I think a lot of times scams come up, and this is just me speaking from experience, because no one's done the planning. They haven't thought about it when they're well and able. We like to see clients when they're healthy and they're making good decisions based on knowing all the circumstances. So you have a power of attorney and a trust, a designation of healthcare surrogate for your healthcare. We then go into a pre-need guardian or a voluntary guardianship. These are through the courts. A voluntary guardianship would be if I needed a guardianship today and I have capacity, but I just need someone else to manage my finances, and I want to have sort of a higher level of protection. And so I'm going to go through the court system which is extremely expensive. I don't want anyone to think this is a great alternative, but we have to use it sometimes when we have individuals that have capacity, but they need someone to manage their finances and they're not comfortable signing a power of attorney. So we have court oversight with a voluntary guardianship. And then another way of planning is nuptial agreements. And I put this one in here because what I've seen a few times in my practice is, a spouse passes away, surviving spouse may not be in the, may have some diminished mental capacity, may not, may be lonely, may not, may have a lot of people knocking on their door and wanting to help them out, and some are wonderful neighbors and friends, and some are not. And a nuptial agreement helps kind of shoo people away sometimes that were hoping to get married. And I hate to say it, but cash in, because in Florida, surviving spouses have quite a lot of benefits. But the nuptial agreement can allow someone who does want to get married later in life, and if they or their family members are concerned that there's a financial reason, the nuptial agreement can help stop that, or to say that's not, if we're going to get married, we're getting married because we love each other, and your finances are your finances and mine are mine. So these are planning tools that we use to try and help clients understand, first of all, that they may become incapacitated in the future, that they may have diminished mental capacity. And that maybe that sounds like so common to you. I have to say many of my clients just think they're going to pass away in their sleep one night, and they are certain that they'll never need a power of attorney. I had a client ask me the other day, he said to me, "I'll come back and see you when I need a power of attorney." And I said, "Well, I hate to break it to you, that's a day too late, because if you really need one, you probably don't have the capacity to sign one." So those are the planning things that we as attorneys can use to educate our clients and hopefully find the right people to fill these roles. Now it's 12:36. Am I supposed to continue on, or do you want me to speed it up here?
I actually have you down for about another 7 more minutes, but you know, I think we're doing great on time. So thank you. And I would just say keep rolling with it. And
all right.
But I will give you, about a 1 to 2 minute.
Okay, great.
I think you're doing okay, Kristen. Thanks.
Okay. I've warned her that I'll speak forever. So if we don't have planning, and you don't need to, and this is what we're going to talk about real briefly, but if we don't have planning, there are things we can do through the courts, and that's guardianship, which we try to avoid at all costs, but that's what is available. So if there's a situation out there where someone's incapacitated, there's a scam happening, maybe they have all of these documents, but they're not working, our other plan, our go-to thing is guardianship. So you can go to my next slide. And the next slide talks a lot about, it doesn't matter all the planning we do if no one knows. And I think this is where we as a community need to really step it up. And I don't know exactly how, but we have people come to see us, usually it's the family members, way late, things have happened, hundreds of thousands of dollars have gone through. And in the one case that I'm mentioning, the hairdresser knew all along. Hairdressers are mail carriers. There are people in our society that see these things. And unlike myself, who's an attorney, where even if I do see it, I am restricted by a lot of confidentiality, we need to reach out and know there's people who can express when we know that something's happened to mom or dad or brother or sister. We also have financial institutions that will allow you to name a trusted party to your investment advisor. I think this is a terrific way, because what you need to have are people who are watching over your finances, who have someone they can contact when they say, tens of thousands of dollars are leaving this account. So something might be happening. So we want to be able to trigger it. So we can go now to the next one. And also keep in mind the person you trust as your trusted advisor. If you have diminished mental capacity, you might not think they're a trusted advisor anymore. We tend to think those around us might be the ones scamming us, and sometimes they are, but sometimes they're the ones who are really trying to help us. So this goes through and talks about what a power of attorney does. I talked about it on the first screen quite a bit, that it allows someone to act on your behalf. It can help your agent access your accounts to see if there is something going on, to do a credit file lock or freeze. They can do quite a bit, but they can also, as I say at the very end, it's a tool for stealing your money. So we don't want just anyone serving. And oftentimes we're saying, who's a family member? And I caution people, sometimes friends are more trustworthy than family members. So we have to really look outside and open up our mind and think, who are the right people to serve in these different roles? My next slide is just about guardianship, I believe. And this is when you have to go to court. As attorneys, I love guardianships, and I tell everybody, if an attorney loves it, you don't. They're very expensive, they're ongoing, they're wonderful tools though, if you need to get in there and take over someone's accounts. And the big difference between guardianship and power of attorney does not remove any of your rights. Like you and your agent are walking along doing, you can do the same thing. With a guardianship, we remove rights from an individual, so they no longer can contract, they no longer can write checks. It's a very extreme step to take. We have to do it sometimes, we don't like to. It's often not pleasant, depending on the level of capacity someone has. But this is where we go to, and that's what I try and get my clients to realize. If we don't get a plan in place, you're leaving it up to an expensive guardianship at the end. Let's see if I have one more slide. I don't think I do.
That's your last slide.
That's my
Kristen.
slide. Okay, great. All right, so that's, you know, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is help our clients plan, to be able to talk to them a little bit about the things that can happen as we age. People go through diminished mental capacity. Some go through it very gracefully, some not so gracefully. I get all the not so gracefully phone calls. So hopefully this has helped a little bit with what an attorney can do to help in the planning part. I did not touch on what we do when there is, when there are scams going on, which we can talk about another time.
Yeah, Kristen, that was great. We are going to try to hold all the questions to the end, so we have enough time for all the speakers to get through their materials. That's why we're leaving at least 30 minutes at the end of all the presentations for Q&A. We do have, and Jessica, I'm not able to see the text that you just sent me, but there is a person who has got to leave before the 1 o'clock. We'll try to slip that question in as quickly as we can. But let's just jump to Alicia Summers, who is with Regions Bank, and she is the Financial Wellness Manager. 8 questions. And Jessica, why don't you start with your list of questions? And before we do that, if you're not aware, there is that little chat box down here at the bottom of the screen. You type it in, and one of our producers will read the question. If you are on a mobile phone, look for the 3 dots on the mobile phone, and that will lead you to the chat box. So here we go. Jessica, you want to start with question number 1, please?
Yep. The first question is, how can we know the stats for abuse reported is 1 in 24 if 23 are not reported?
So I think that's an Eileen question. You had mentioned 1 in 24 are not reported. And so the question is for Eileen. And Jessica, could you repeat that last little section in there? How do you know about what is not reported?
How can we know the stats for abuse is reported is 1 in 24 and 23 is not reported?
I hear what you're saying. The one thing that I did when I first came into the field of elder abuse was to reach out to the Department of Children and Families Adult Protective Service and ask them for a report that listed all of the maltreatments for the county for people age 60 and over. Since then, I have found that, you know, that you can go to the National Adult Protective Service website and find information particular to your state. And that gives you a better feel for statistics and cases. Again, this is a very secretive kind of abuse. And so for all those reasons that Kristen and Alicia had mentioned, as well as myself, about shame and guilt and all of that, people don't report. So they estimate based on Adult Protective Service national statistics, that 1 in 24, only one case is reported out of 24.
Thank you, Eileen. Jessica, question number 2.
Question number 2, how many people can you designate on your power of attorney to help?
Kristen, that sounds like for you. How many people can you designate as a power of attorney?
So there's really 2 different things that we're asking here. We can name 2 people or 3 people to work together, co-agents, which we tend to highly discourage because it's just not a good thing to do. What you want to name is 1. And then if you want to say how many people can you name, I like to name a lot of contingent. So my spouse, my son, my daughter, and every attorney is different. So keep in mind, you're hearing where I come from with this. Do I sometimes have co-agents? I do, but from the banking world, if I have co-agents, meaning 2 people can act together, most banks make us indicate that either or, because how do we bank now? We bank online. And if we said they both have to work together, which a lot of my clients like the idea of, oh, I want my 2 kids to do everything together. Well, if you're banking online, there's no way for a bank to know that both people are sitting there, agreeing to the checks being written. So even when we have co-agents, 2 people able to work, in my office is typically going to say either or, which causes other issues, but I'm there to help my clients understand what the problems could be and carry out their wishes. But I love to have as many contingents in the hopes that if 1 or 2 can't serve, so that would mean my spouse is, or whoever you've named number 1, is incapacitated or deceased, you can go to number 2. And I hope when they have to go to number 2, they think to come back and see me and update it, because when number 2 is working, they have to explain why number 1's not there, which can be difficult. Here's a death certificate, here's a letter from the medical provider saying he or she's unable to handle their financial affairs. But the reason I like to have as many contingent as I can is people don't come to see me. I try and be nice, I try and be reasonable. I have people come to see me that the last time they saw an attorney for estate planning was 30 years ago. So I have to assume these may be the last documents they ever sign. They might live to over 100. So I'm hoping someone on that list has been there.
Terrific. Jessica, number 3, question number 3.
Any free support to set guardianship available?
Me again?
Are there any free support to set guardianship available? This is from Barbara.
So we're looking for, is there free help out there, either for guardianship or for, I'm assuming, any other type of legal? And we have Jacksonville area legal aid that you can contact for free support, and they go out to the different counties, like here in Council on Aging. So I would recommend the first thing you do is call Jacksonville area legal aid.
Great, and we'll include that as one of the resources on our list. Jessica, do you have any more?
It looks like I have 2 more. This one says, what about those stuck in assisted living facilities and did not have a power of attorney in place because the virus caught them by surprise?
That's a great question. So yes, people are in assisted living facilities, and how do you manage then getting power of attorney in any of those legal documents?
I've been standing outside windows. I hope this is legal. I don't want the notary police to come get me, but I have the nursing homes print off the document, which they usually will do for me. And then we walk around and they'll, here locally, open the door so we can converse with them having it. And it's not been easy. And we also have remote notary services. So there's one, having an attorney able to speak with the client to figure out what they need. And if we can do that over the phone, that's working. And then we need notaries and witnesses. And we just started in Florida in January and a new part of it in July of remote notaries. So we are, COVID-19 has taught us there was a reason we need to have some of this remote notary services.
That's, again, some of these things that you might not have thought about before, and adjustments are being made. So I guess one of the things you may be saying, Kristen, is first of all, plan ahead as best as you can. And then second of all, some adjustments will be made to to get these things notarized and documented in a way. Jessica, what's the last question you have? And then we'll go to Alex.
The last question is for Eileen. What resources are available for the caregiver when he or she is the abused person? Then it goes, neglect from other family members, physical and emotional abuse from the person receiving care.
Well, actually, I think Andrea's better able to answer this. The Caregivers Coalition of Northeast Florida is available, and to help people who are working with a difficult older person. ElderSource offers now that virtual support group. So Andrea, do you want to take that?
Sure, and I think Linda Levin might still be on the line as well, our CEO with ElderSource. But we do have a virtual caregiver support group for individuals who unfortunately are not able to leave their homes. They're caring for a loved one and they need that support and guidance from others who are walking the same walk. So you could go to our website, myeldersource.org, under the virtual caregiver support group, and we will put that in the resources as well. And I think part of the question had said, what is if the caregiver is being abused? And I guess it depends on, I don't know if it's just they're having a difficult time with their caregiving responsibilities, but there are a lot of resources out there right now, specifically, excuse me, for our caregivers. And we are part of a coalition, a caregiver coalition of Northeast Florida. There's a great a blog that it's done and resources that we share not only on the website but on the Facebook page, so we can put that in there as well. Alex, you had a couple of questions.
Okay, the question that I have, it says, when does the durable power of attorney expire? I think that's directed towards Kristen.
So they don't expire unless you have specific language in them to expire. Sometimes we're doing a very specific power of attorney. I'm doing one right now for someone who's selling a piece of real estate, and we don't need it to go on forever. We're not planning for his or her incapacity. We're planning for the next 3 months when the house closes. So you can have an expiration date in the power of attorney, but generally they do not expire.
In part of, maybe part B of that too, is what is a durable power of attorney? What expires, so to speak, or what goes away once the person dies? Isn't there?
The whole thing.
There's a
Yes.
difference. Okay.
Yes,
I think
a
that's
power-
important for people to know, that if you pass away, that durable power of attorney goes away, correct?
Very important, and we hear that all the time. I have mom's power of attorney, she died, why can't I get into the bank? And I always say, the power of attorney dies when you die. So it doesn't mean anything, it's only during your lifetime.
Then what? I guess, so if you pass away, what is the next document then that protects that person to carry on the business that needs to be done? Is that the trust?
Well, if the
In the will?
asset is in the decedent's, the person who's passed away, if it's in their name alone without a beneficiary, it's going to go through probate, which means we would be either looking at a will or at the statute to say who's going to get it. So you could have a bank account, your checking account could have your children as payable on death or transfer on death beneficiaries. You die, and now they're going to get it. It's a contract. They're going to go into the bank with a death certificate, and they are beneficiary designations, but they're getting it because it's a contract naming beneficiaries, not because they were an agent on a power of attorney.
Right. Alex, I think you said a couple more, and then I think Jessica's got one, and I've got a couple.
Actually, one of my questions was already answered earlier, so
Okay.
it's just a question. So if Jessica or if you have either more questions, you can go ahead.
I'm going to bring up, I've had this question asked of us when we are doing outreach events, and we haven't done a lot of outreach events this year, obviously, but people were very interested in knowing about that free genetic testing that are at health fairs. You know, people are dressed in lab coats, they look very professional, they're sitting at a table, and they are offering you the opportunity to see if you have a propensity for, let's just say, a cancer gene. And what they are doing in many, many cases is they are collecting your Medicare information, and they're building Medicare upwards to the tune of $9,000. So And then if that Medicare rejects it, then you are on the line, you are on the hook for that bill. But the other interesting thing is that when you have a Medicare plan, you are only allowed one genetic test in your lifetime. So basically you've used up that opportunity to get potentially very important health information. So again, Alicia talked about those medical scams. Anything that is free, it generally is not free, and you should not be giving out any of that information in a very public setting. You know, sitting down, it may be, again, in a lobby of a library or even an assisted living facility. So we do advise people through our SHINE program. It's Serving Health Insurance Needs of Elders. SHINE has a great program called SMP, which is the Senior Medicare Patrol, and it helps you understand the potential of getting defrauded with through your Medicare plan. So that's really, really important. And again, all these things that we talked about, we're going to give you a whole laundry list of resources. Jessica, I think you said you had one question, and then we'll let any of our other speakers pipe in for last bits of helpful hints. Jessica?
I have two, actually.
Okay, great.
The first one is, in the lack of any of the advance directive documents, does your spouse automatically become the designated person to make medical and financial decisions on your behalf?
Sounds like you, Kristen.
Yes. So two different things, finance and healthcare. For healthcare, we have a statute that says if you do not have an advance directive, your guardian first, and then your spouse, then your living children who are your living adult children. It goes through a whole list all the way down to a friend. So we're not too concerned about healthcare. There's going to be someone on that list unless you don't want your spouse or your adult children to make those decisions, which is very frequent in my practice, I hear. For finance, that's why I said it at one point, the power of attorney is so important. If you do not have a durable power of attorney and something has to be done, someone needs to take required minimum distributions, or they need to redo the investment strategy, they need to get money out of the checking account. There is no, I'm a spouse, therefore I can, unless you're an owner of the account. So yes, for healthcare, there's going to be a person. It may or may not be the person you want. And no for finance, and they may be able to access it because they're an owner of the account. But no one's an owner of your IRA except for yourself. So that's a big one for us.
Jessica?
Okay. The last question is, we hear be an advocate. What are some advocacy actions I can take?
And that sounds like it could be for any of all of you, any or all. And Alicia, I think you had a couple of good pointers toward the end of your presentation about being, taking steps to be an advocate for yourself or for others.
I think just being aware, being conscious, it's one thing to be aware of these things, but taking action and providing some protections, like Kristen says, having the right documentation, having the right co-owners on your account, having the right, paperwork, having organized paperwork. We've got some great resources, Andrea, I'll send you, we've got a great, document checklist. I think so often family members are afraid to have conversations about where everything is, and those document checklists where gives direction where all that information can be can really help families wade through a lot and get the answers that they need and take action when they need at the appropriate time that they need to. So I just would recommend that taking the time and doing some deep dive and taking some action and becoming aware, documenting, and then moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Eileen, did you have anything that you wanted to add in regard to advocacy?
Well, with regard to sexual assaults and advocacy, our advocates do a case management, so they will assist with other resources in the community. Someone may need help with their electric bill because they were sexually assaulted and they've been living elsewhere for their own protection, and they don't have funds now to pay for that. Victims compensation, all of that. But our advocates will help with filing court injunctions and accompany the person who has been hurt to court to help them through the process.
Right. And one of our core values and part of our mission is to advocate for older adults here at ElderSource. We're getting about 7,000 calls a month on our helpline, and they are the questions and information that people are asking right now. It runs the gamut from, yes, I need, I'm looking for an attorney, or I'm looking for some help with my utility bill. So our customer service specialists, who are amazing and kind and patient, we are here as an advocate for you, and our tagline is "Start here for help." So a lot of times you may be sitting at your kitchen table and you don't even know where to begin. So we have a whole wonderful database of information and resources that we are, again, it is who we are and what we do, that we are trying to help people live as independently as possible and with as much dignity as possible. And when you don't have a place to start for help, let us be that advocate for you. And we can connect you to Eileen at the Women's Center, and we can connect you with the folks at Regions Bank or a Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, and looking for referrals for particular professionals such as Kristen. So do lean on us as well. We have just about 8 minutes left. Is there anything else that Eileen, Alicia, or Kristen would like to jump in there before I do my final little wrap-up slides? Is there anything? Are we good?
Andrew, just one suggestion. Use Google. So often, if people would just Google the scam that they are being, whether it's, eBay, AT&T gift card, like if somebody's saying, well, if you buy this through, eBay, you get free AT&T iPhone or whatever. You just Google, eBay and AT&T together. The whole scam will come up through your Google site. If you are trying to, if somebody's trying to force you to make a decision, Google the advisor's name. Financial advisors has so regulated that, do their research. There's websites to pull up their, records and whether that, they're reputable. So I think sometimes we have the power at our fingertips and we don't always know. And as you said, ElderSource does an amazing job, but sometimes it's just as simple as a Google search.
I'll put in a plug for one of our partner agencies, AARP. A lot of times in this conversation, we've talked about just Googling, just go online. Just, sometimes folks are not as comfortable, technologically savvy, but AARP's got some great tools to help you learn how to use your iPhone, how to use your iPad. So that help is out there. And again, when in doubt, give us a call. But you don't have to be an AARP member to access that. So go through aarp.org and you look for help. How do I do whatever? So they'll show you how. There are great tutorials on that. Alex, did you tell me you have one more question, or was there anybody else that wanted to jump in before we wrap up here? Alex?
Okay, yes, actually, these will be the last, it's 2 questions. It'll be the last 2 questions so we can wrap this up. So the first one says, if I am afraid to change my financial affairs to online services, what is available for me to ease my fears?
Go ahead, Alicia.
I think it's education and knowledge and awareness. We actually teach a class called Banking Without a Branch. It's a webinar that we do 3 times a month or 3 times a week for every other week that they can access through our website. But we teach people how to get comfortable with that technology. First time we used Zoom, having this call, it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you just have to try it and do it. But also AARP, as you said, Andrea, has tons of resources. I read AARP cover to cover each month and on their website because they do such a good job of explaining things. But I think try the online banking, maybe go through your financial institutions training that they have to use their online banking. Don't, Google it. Call your banker and say, how do I get more comfortable using your online resources? There's lots of handouts and tools and that kind of things to get you more comfortable and protect your information.
That's great. Thank you, Alicia. Alex.
Thanks.
Okay, the very last question, it says, is there a document to select or decline intubation? I think that may be a
part of your advanced directives.
It would be, and I just want to, so you can put anything you want in your healthcare surrogate documents. depending, and I always tell people, you can put it in the document. My belief is medical providers are going to look to your healthcare surrogate, the person you've named, to a lot of times make those difficult decisions. One good thing about COVID-19, it's opened our eyes to what might be something that people previously said they did not want for healthcare, and now they're like, oh, I would be okay with that if after 10 days I was fine. You know, things that in the medical world that some people were strongly opposed to. So yes, you can put certain things into your documents, but keep in mind, you really want a person, a surrogate that understands your values, who can then make a decision based on your overall values, because I don't have a crystal ball and no one has any idea why you're in the hospital at that time. So I strongly discourage my clients from being too specific. But
right, that's really great. And it leads me to one last little tag on with that. You can have all these documents in place, but I think having the conversations are extremely important. Making sure it could be in writing, but having the conversations with those people who you know and trust in your family to carry out your wishes. So these are hard conversations, but you know what, we're in hard times right now. So I think that it's extremely important for people to get out of their comfort zone and realize, I want to make sure that I put down in writing, and then I have the conversation with the individual so they know where those documents are, as well as what your true intent is with that information. All right, this is terrific. Alex, the last couple slides, let's pop those up. Here is the very important phone number, the Florida Abuse Hotline, 1-800-96-ABUSE. That is really, really important. And again, please think about that. Think about your neighbors during this tough time, and don't be shy about, providing that information or that support to somebody who might need it during this critical time. Next, Alex. So we've got, through ElderSource, our e-newsletter, our website. You can follow us on social media. It is, again, there's lots and lots of information out there that we will be providing to you. And also, we have a great partner with us today. Barb Batista is with the Nassau County Health Department, and she worked with us very closely back in, gosh, I think it might have even been December, November, December, when we started planning this event. So I do want to thank them and Barb for her expertise in bringing Kristen to the table. And, we certainly had to pivot. Normally this event takes place in person, and we have anywhere from 50 to 100 and 200 people. But I think we've had a great turnout today. So thanks to Barb and our partners at the Nassau County Health Department. So I'm sure she'll have some information to share as well. And Alex, I think there's only one more slide left. Maybe it's just the thank you slide. Yep, thank you, everybody. It's terrific. And we really appreciate all of you joining us today for 90 minutes of what we hope will be valuable information that you'll be sharing with your family and friends and your coworkers and agencies that you work with. So have a great day, and thanks again.